Hey guys, doing a Honda 300 4-trax carb rebuild, dropping my screwdrivers as usual. But you're going to pull it off the bike, and first thing you want to do is get the float ball off. It's going to have 4 Phillips heads, or should be. You may have to use an impact screwdriver depending how hard they are. But when you pull the ball off, be careful. There's going to be a little gasket in there. You don't want to damage it if it's old and brittle, like mine was. It took me a few minutes of being real careful with it not to damage it. But yeah, they get dirty, especially with ethanol gas in them. Just gonna be careful with that gasket. Then you're gonna find a good spot to put all the little things, that way they don't run away. Next thing's the float. It's gonna have a little pin pushed through it. You can get you a little chisel or flathead, something. Then get some pliers and pull it out. My actual float needle was stuck in the seat, so I just started working on my main jet and pilot jets, make it a little easier. I used some linemen's right here, but that should be an 8mm wrench or socket. Then I'll work on the idle air mixture screw, and I'm counting how many times it goes in clockwise, which is around 4.5, which is way high. Factory should be 2.5 for most vehicles. But once you get it out, there's going to be a metal flat washer and a rubber O-ring behind this little valve you're seeing that I took out. You're going to have to get a little piece of wire or something to dig those out. But now I'm removing the bottom half of the float ball. Now it's the top half of the carburetor. When you do this, you want to make sure that the rubber's not damaged. There's no holes, no bad spots, because it will greatly affect your RPMs and throttle in general. It's pretty easy to replace. It wasn't dirty, so I just dropped it in there to clean it up a little bit. Polisher. Putting all my little pieces that don't need cleaned in that tote, that way they don't bounce around. Just checking everything. Honestly, it was in better shape than I thought, and when I'm using my ultrasonic cleaners, just very hot water and pine saw. I've had great luck with it with 20 plus carbs. Just set it for 30 minutes. If they're real bad, do 2 cycles for about an hour. Maybe get a toothbrush or some small needles to clear the jets if it's just real filthy. But this one came out pretty good. I was confused because there's a little washer that goes on that fuel air mixture screw, and there's nowhere to be seen. It was just hiding. But yeah, basically you just put it back the same way you took it apart. You're going to have the main jet passage, the main jet, and the pilot jet I just put in. I can do a rejetting video on a different time. It's a whole different video worth of talking about, if not a series, honestly. Getting the actual main jet in, and once you pull them out, you want to make sure all the holes are clean. There's no gunk build up anywhere. Putting the drain valve back in. That way I don't just flood myself with gas when it starts back up. Alright, now the fuel air mixture screw. Like I was telling you, you get the spring, then you put the flat metal washer on it. Then I'm going to grab my O-ring out of my little tote right here. And you don't, when you tighten this, you don't want to tighten it super tight. You just want it snug, just barely snug. And then you'll bag it out 2.5 turns, like you'll see me do here. And I always like to have my jet going up, that way the O-ring can't fall off the jet. I just have bad luck. But yeah, you're going to tighten it all the way, then just bag it out 2.5 turns. And if it's a little lean at idle, you can back it out 3. You just have to check your spark plug. You're going to put the float back in. You just slide your needle valve back on the float, or your float valve, my bad. And then slide it into the seat, and then try to line up the holes to get this pin to slide all the way through. And you can adjust the float height, but you shouldn't need to unless it's been tampered with before. If it's unknown, that's a different story. But yeah, you put your gasket back on, be real careful. Sometimes they'll actually kind of hug it and it'll seat nicely, but mine was a little older, so I had to be real careful. And then it's going to be the longer screws with the washers on it. It should be 4 of them. I'll do the top side, like I said, check for tears on the rubber, any aging, bad spots, because it would greatly affect your throttle. And just seating it good, because you don't want it to have a leak of any sort. Just cause all sorts of problems. And you put your spring in, the top back on, making sure to line up that one corner with the notch. Then it's 4 screws again. It should be the small ones. And then it's pretty much good. You gotta put this bottom piece back in. Yeah, really not a bad carb at all, not too much going on. Only way to do it, in my opinion, is the ultrasonic cleaner. It's just tens, if not hundreds times faster. Alright, so back in the bike, there's a few different ways to do it. First, I gotta put my choke cable set up back in, but you can either put the choke and throttle on first, or you can put the air intake and airbox boot on the carb first, then put the choke and throttle. It really don't matter, it's just preference. But you do want to make sure most of these choke cables are plastic threads. You want to make sure you don't cross thread them or anything like that. It should be a 10 or a 12 mil wrench if you want to get it real tight. But just make sure you don't cross thread them, so that'll be a whole different ball game. Now's a good time to adjust your throttle. If it has some slop in it, just back the nut out until you have manufacturer's spec on the throttle. I prefer about a 1/8 to 1/4 inch of play myself personally. Can be kind of tight. You can take that back plate off. It holds the gas tank down with 4 bolts. I just never bother. Once you get it in place, tighten it up. Make sure your choke and throttle are working appropriately. And I'm actually lining my tank, so I'm just putting it on a water bottle gas tank. Real high quality, top dollar, like my ignition. And hopefully we got fire. That little screw right there that you saw is how you adjust your idle. If you turn the front towards the engine, it will increase idle. If you turn it backwards, it'll decrease idle. Drop it on the mud, you know, it's trying to get nasty. Maybe next time. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed.